They say time heals all wounds. But some wounds are too deep, too fresh, too violent to fade with time. Mine was still open, still raw, even though it had been almost 2 years since I pulled that trigger. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Daphne. I was 23 when I left my hometown in Enugu, a dusty, quiet place tucked somewhere between forgotten roads and broken dreams. That was just after I graduated from the university with a degree that I was too exhausted to celebrate. My parents had died a week before my final exams. A ghastly car accident that took both their lives and all the pieces of mine. I buried them and my childhood in one day. After the burial, the house felt haunted. Not by ghosts, but by memories. The sound of my mother's laughter in the kitchen, my father's heavy footsteps around the house, the late-night prayers we said together. It was all gone. I couldn't stay. I needed to breathe. I called Evelyn, my roommate from school. She was happy that I wanted to relocate to her city and promised to accommodate me for as long as I wanted to stay with her. With the money I got from friends and partners of my parent during the burial, I packed my meager belongings, just a box and a duffel bag, and boarded a bus to Lagos. I told myself it was for a fresh start, but deep down I knew I was running. Running from pain, from loneliness, from the unbearable silence of grief. Lagos was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos that made you forget your own. 1 week after I moved to Lagos, I got my own apartment. A self-contained apartment. It wasn't exquisite, just a place I returned to every day. I got a job at a supermarket. It was nothing fancy. I stood behind the cashier's desk, scanned items, forced smiles, and earned barely enough to feed myself. But at least I wasn't drowning in memories anymore. That's where I met him, James. Grief has a way of lingering inside you, quietly gnawing at your will to keep going. And when James came into my life, offering warmth, attention, and promises of a better future, I clung to him like he was the last raft in a stormy sea. He came in on a Friday. I remember because it had rained all morning, and my shoes were soaked from walking in the flooded gutter near the bus stop. He bought 3 items: a bottle of red wine, a box of chocolates, and a bouquet of artificial roses. When I handed him his change, he smiled. "You should be the one receiving these, not ringing them up," he said. I laughed nervously. I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't used to compliments, especially from a clean-shaven man with charming smiles and car keys. He came back the next day, and the next. Within a week, I knew his name was James, that he worked in tech, that he lived in a serviced apartment not far from my workplace. He said I was too pretty to be working a cashier job. He offered to drive me home once, just once, he said, and I agreed. I should have said no, but when you're young, grieving, and desperate for something, anything to fill the void, even monsters wear angel faces. We started dating seriously within a month. He took me out to eat at nice places. Places I usually only saw from the outside. He bought me drinks with umbrellas in them and asked me questions about my dreams, my fears, and my childhood. He listened like he actually cared. When he proposed, I should have hesitated. We hadn't been together that long. I barely knew his family, but I was tired of being alone, tired of sleeping in a cold, bare apartment with nothing but the hum of traffic keeping me company. So I said yes. We got married in a small ceremony at the local registry. No guests, just us and a bored-looking clerk. James said it was better this way, less drama, less stress. He assured me we'd have a proper wedding later in the future. I believed him. At first, things were fine. Better than fine, even. I felt like I was finally part of something again. He handled the bills, cooked dinner sometimes, and even suggested we start trying for kids right away. I was hesitant at first. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but he kept saying how much he wanted a family with me. Then, slowly, things started to change. It began subtly. He didn't like it when I stayed late at work. He said it worried him. What if something happened to me? I agreed to leave early, thinking it was just him caring too much. Then he started asking me who I talked to while I was at work. I laughed it off at first, but he wouldn't let it go. One day, after an argument over something stupid, he grabbed my wrist a little too hard. "Just a bruise," he said. "An accident." I believed him because I wanted to, because I needed to, but it didn't stop there. The bruises started to pile up after that first incident. Small, subtle marks that I could cover with long sleeves and makeup. He always apologized afterward, holding me close and whispering how sorry he was. He said it was stress from work or that I provoked him without meaning to. Each time, I forgave him. I told myself he still loved me, that this wasn't who he really was. But the real change wasn't in the bruises, it was in how he controlled me. He insisted I quit my job at the supermarket. He said I deserved better than working retail, that he could take care of me now that we were married. I resisted at first, but he wore me down with sweet words and gentle touches that turned rough when I refused. After I quit, he started checking my phone. He said it was because he loved me, that he wanted to protect me from people who might try to take advantage of my kindness. I handed it over without a fight, hoping it would make him happy. Slowly, he isolated me. First, it was telling me not to meet up with my former coworkers. Then, he discouraged me from calling my only friend, Evelyn. He said she was a bad influence, that she didn't understand our love. Eventually, I stopped trying. I stopped calling. I stopped seeing anyone. My entire world became the four walls of our apartment and whatever version of James he chose to show me each day. There were moments of peace between the storms. Sometimes, for a few days, he would be the man I fell in love with, the one who smiled, who brought me tea in bed, who whispered that he couldn't live without me. Those moments were cruel because they gave me hope that things could get better, that maybe somehow I could fix him. Though he always made me feel like I was the problem, but deep down, I knew it wasn't me who needed fixing. It was him. And the worst part? I was starting to disappear. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally. I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. I barely spoke unless spoken to. I flinched at sudden movements. I jumped whenever the door slammed shut. And then, one night, after another fight, this time over something meaningless, he lost control completely. He shoved me against the wall so hard that the wind knocked out of me. I tried to scream, but he pressed his hand over my mouth, his breath hot against my ear. "You think you can talk to me like that?" he hissed. "You're lucky I don't kill you." I thought he was joking. I was wrong. That night changed everything. I woke up in a hospital bed, disoriented and aching from head to toe. Machines beeped around me, and the smell of antiseptic stung my nostrils. My body felt foreign, broken. I couldn't move without pain slicing through me like knives. A nurse was adjusting my fore when I opened my eyes fully. She looked relieved. "Thank God," she murmured. "You've been unconscious for almost 2 days." 2 days? I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, my lips cracked. I croaked out a question, barely audible. What happened?" She hesitated before answering. "You were admitted with severe internal injuries," she said carefully. "There was significant trauma to your abdomen. You were pregnant." "Pregnant?" I stared at her, my brain struggling to process the words. 2 months along. I hadn't even known, hadn't noticed the missed period, hadn't realized the nausea was anything more than stress, hadn't known that I had already lost it. "You miscarried," she continued gently, "and the damage was extensive. Unfortunately, the doctors had to remove your womb." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. No more chances, no children, no future beyond what I had already endured. Tears spilled down my face, silent and burning. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw at the sheets and demand answers. But I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. Who brought me here? I asked amidst the tears welling up in my eyes. A man, she said. He identified himself as your neighbor. I nodded shamefully. He wasn't even bold enough to identify himself as my husband. Your husband hasn't visited, the nurse added cautiously. Is he aware of what happened? I didn't answer. I couldn't. There was no answer to give. Because James hadn't come. Not once after he brought me there. Even after what he did. He had beaten me so badly that I lost the ability to ever carry a child. And yet, he hadn't even bothered to check if I was alive. And in that moment, something inside me broke completely. Not in sorrow. In rage. The day I got discharged from the hospital, I returned to the house we once called home, not because I wanted to live with a monster, but because I had unfinished business. I no longer saw James as a husband. He was a case file waiting to be closed, a predator I had allowed to fester in my life. And now, I would be his reckoning. I moved with silence, emotionless, just like he had taught me. He had drained me of tears, of screams, of shame. All that was left was a strange calmness fueled by cold resolve. I knew James kept a gun. He had shown it to me once. He said it was for protection. A Glock 19, hidden in a box under the bed. I had never touched it, never wanted to. But now I knew exactly where it was. I took it out that night. I held it in my trembling hands for a long time, wondering how something so small could take life and also save it. But I knew I needed more than a bullet. I needed proof, evidence of what I had endured. The first thing I did was to buy microsurveillance cameras. The kind you could hide in flower vases and behind curtain rods. No blinking lights. Just quiet witnesses. I used his own money. He never asked about the bills. He assumed control meant safety. I placed one in the hallway, one in the sitting room, one in my bedroom, one in the kitchen. It wasn't hard. James was always at work. James never noticed. He was too consumed by his own bitterness, by his routine of dominance and control. I cooked his meals, I washed his clothes, I lay in silence when he stormed in drunk, barking orders and slurring insults. But inside me, the countdown had begun. 1 week later, it happened. After he came home reeking of alcohol and perfume that wasn't mine, he demanded that I sleep with him. I refused. His expression darkened instantly. What did you say? He growled. I'm not in the mood, I answered calmly. He lunged toward me, grabbing my arm roughly. I don't care what mood you're in, he snarled. You're my wife. You do what I say. I wrenched free and ran to my room, locking the door behind me. He pounded on it, shouting threats. I stood by the bed, heart hammering, waiting. This was it. This was the moment. I reached under the pillow and pulled out the gun. Cold steel in my hands. Finally, power shifted. Then the door burst open. He stormed in, wild-eyed and furious. And I raised the gun, pointed it directly at his chest, and fired. Once, twice, 3 times. He staggered, eyes wide with shock. Then he collapsed. As I stood over his motionless body, flashes of the past surged through my mind like a flood breaking through a dam. I remembered the way he used to smile at me in the beginning. That slow, confident grin that made me feel like I had finally found someone who truly saw me. I remembered dancing with him in the kitchen to a song we both loved, his arms wrapped tightly around me, whispering sweet nothings in my ear. I remembered the way he held me the night I cried over losing my parents, how he told me I wasn't alone, that he would always be there for me. All of it was a lie. I remembered the first time he slapped me, the sting across my cheek, the confusion in my eyes. I had apologized instantly, thinking I must have done something wrong. I had convinced myself it was my fault. How many times had I said that to myself? Maybe I provoked him. Maybe if I had just been quieter, softer, less annoying. Maybe if I had listened more, obeyed faster, smiled when he wanted me to. But none of it mattered. He had taken everything from me. My dignity, my future, my unborn child. I dropped to my knees beside his body, tears streaming down my face. Not for him, but for me. For the girl I used to be. The one who believed in love, in second chances, in redemption. That girl was gone. In her place was someone hardened, someone who had learned the brutal truth about survival. I reached for my phone and called Evelyn. "I shot James," I said as the line connected. "Don't do anything. I am calling the police." She had replied. I let the phone slip from my ear to the floor. I didn't bother wiping fingerprints. I didn't hide the gun. I simply sat beside his body and waited. I had nothing left to lose. When the police arrived, I was calm. They entered cautiously, guns drawn. When they got to my room, I raised my hands slowly, showing them I wasn't a threat. "He abused me," I said calmly, "for years. And tonight, he tried to hurt me again." One of the officers approached me, lowering his weapon slightly. "Are you injured?" he asked. I shook my head. "But my husband is dead." They checked the body quickly, confirming what I already knew. James was gone. They placed me in handcuffs, read me my rights, and led me to the car. I didn't resist. I didn't cry. I just stared ahead, numb. Evelyn wasn't allowed to get inside or close to me. Back at the station, I was questioned for hours. They asked about the gun, about the fight, about the bruises they noticed on my arms. I told them everything. About the isolation, the beatings, the pregnancy, the miscarriage, the loss of my womb. I told them about the cameras. They saw the footage, clear video evidence of James hurting me, threatening me, planning something worse. By the end of the interrogation, the atmosphere had shifted. I wasn't a suspect anymore. I was a victim, a survivor. Do you think Daphne did the right thing? Share your thoughts in the comment section. If you enjoyed this story, like and share it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories.